In a moment, we're going to look at Ezra chapter 9. But before we get there, what an amazing night we had last night at our Light the Night event. Powerful evening. I'm told we had between 800 and 850 people here. What an amazing night. Thank you to all of you who came and decorated your cars, your trucks, your trunks, and it was a great night. Thank you so much. Prevenient Grace was all over the place, and it was an awesome, awesome evening. Thank you for your support of that event. Also wanted to let you know that I mentioned it once before, but this Christmas we are sponsoring Pastor Michael and Hope McCants of our Florence New Start International Church of the Nazarene. Pastor Michael is bivocational. He and Hope have 3 daughters. They are 6, 7, and 9. Their youngest child, who is 6, is paralyzed and is in a wheelchair. And that fact has been an enormous strain on them financially. And here real soon, we are going to be presenting ways in which you can help us to sponsor them for Christmas. Last year, we sponsored a pastor and his family on our district. What a powerful opportunity that was for us to bless this family on our district. So here real soon, we'll be presenting a way in which you can help us to bless them and give them a great Christmas. So in order to make it financially feasible, gifts usually start around $10. But we wanted to let you know that for those of you that God might impress to do more, Pastor Michael is doing a New Start church, which means that a lot of the stuff that he personally owns is needed to be used in the ministry. Unfortunately, both his computer is falling apart, and they have a music ministry that helps to fund their income, and their CD duplicator broke. And so between the new computer that is needed to run the technology of the congregation and this duplicator, if we could, and God impresses on some folks in our congregation, we need about $2,300 for those 2 items together. We're looking at getting a rebuilt Macintosh for them. And so if you say, you know what, God has blessed us and we just want to give to that project in addition to whatever else you might want to do for Christmas for others, just see me. If you're one of the individuals that hates shopping but would love to contribute to this cause, see my wife, and she'll let you know how to get funds to us, and we will do the shopping for you. We always go shopping the day before and fill in gaps as needed, and we'd be honored to shop on your behalf. Thank you for your support of that. God's doing some great things. Ezra chapter 9. We continue our sermon series, and today is a very interesting, very specific topic, and some of you are going to say this topic has absolutely nothing to do with me. That is okay, because it does have something to do with you indirectly. You'll be able to speak into this issue. You'll be able to speak into the life of this issue, even if it doesn't directly apply to you. So Ezra chapter 9, we're just reading the first 3 verses. Ezra chapter 9. After these things had been done, the officials approached me and said, "The people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the peoples of the land with their abominations, from the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken some of their daughters to be wives for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy race has mixed itself with the peoples of the lands. And in this faithlessness, the hand of the officials and the chief men has been foremost." As soon as I heard this, I tore my garment and my cloak and pulled hair from my head and beard and sat appalled. 4.5 months after Ezra comes to town, some average folks approach Ezra with some devastating news. You see, before the exile had taken place, God had specifically instructed his people, when you go into Babylon, you are not to marry anyone other than a Jew. It's a very specific command. Don't do it. Now, some have taken this passage and have abused it and have made it mean something that is very unbiblical. Some have taken this passage and have made it to mean that God is against interracial or international marriage. That would be a gross misinterpretation of this passage. This passage does not say that. So why is it then that God said don't marry anyone who is not a Jew? Well, you have to remember the context of the culture and the time. And the context of the culture and the time was such that the only people that worshiped the Most High God were the Jewish people. No one else did. And so whenever they would go into another land, the risk was that if any particular man married a woman that was not Jewish, she worshiped other gods, frequently more than one god, and the concern was that the worship that woman brought to the marriage was going to influence the man's understanding of worship, and that he would then become a worshiper of these other gods. It had nothing to do with race. It had everything to do with idolatry, worshiping a god that is not the Most High God. What is not specific to the text, but can be found as you search the records, is that the number of men that were placed in exile significantly exceeded the number of women that were placed in exile. Now, if you know anything about math, if there are more men than women, what does that mean for the likelihood of a man getting married? It means it goes down proportionately to the number of men in relation to the women. So if you're one of the men that the women would not find of marriage quality. How do you say that diplomatically? I mean, you just can't get around that very well. If you're one of the guys that the women aren't running after, what do? Well, I'll tell you what they did. We don't have a clear record of this, but it is very likely that they came to conclude, well, what if I marry, and since the point is that I'm not supposed to worship her gods, I'll just get married and not worship her gods. I just won't be influenced by my spouse. Now, if any of you are married, you're chuckling because you know to suggest that I am not going to be influenced by my spouse is a ridiculous assertion. It is ridiculous. But they did what is common to humanity. They tried to find their way around God's call, around God's commands, around God's parameters, around God's protective barriers for our relationship with Him. And they tried to do it their own way and failed miserably. In 1950, 78% of the American population over 18 years of age was married. In 2011, that number had dropped to 48%. And it marked the first time in the history of the United States that the number of single individuals outnumbered the number of married individuals in our population. A significant moment in the culture of the United States. Not only are the number of married individuals decreasing in the United States, the age at which we get married is getting older and older. In the 1960s, the average age for men and women to get married was 22 and 20. Now it is 29 and 27. So we are getting married later and later, and the number of individuals over 18 is getting smaller and smaller. So far, those are just numbers. The University of Chicago recently did a survey of married couples in the United States. And they asked them, are you very happy, happy, unhappy, or very unhappy in your marriage? 60% said very unhappy. 60%. Given 4 choices, picked very unhappy. The status of marriages in America is not good. I don't have a beard to pull out, and even if I did have a beard, I don't think I'd be pulling it out. That would hurt. Ezra was pained with the reality of what it is that's taking place in the marriages of his day. And brother and sister, I have witnessed enormous pain in the lives of those who are married in pastoral ministry. What usually happens is couples wait and wait and wait and wait and wait until they can't take it anymore, and then they'll come see me and hope that in 45 minutes I can undo what all of that waiting and war has done in their home. My brother and sister, if anyone in the United States should have a good marriage, it should be those who follow Jesus. Jesus Christ has set the pattern and paradigm for us for what an awesome marriage can look like. You don't have to settle for divorce. You don't have to wait for death. And as somebody said in prayer this morning, you don't even have to contemplate murder. There is a better way. Some of you are wondering why Miriam is seated on the platform with me today. We have known this message has been coming for some time, and she said, Terry, if you would like, I would be willing to help you in this message today. And so I've asked her, as I have brought an introduction to this message, that she would take some time and from her perspective share with you what she believes would make for a good marriage. Now, I told her this morning, I said, I use you as a sermon illustration all the time. Here's your chance to get even. So Miriam, talk to us.
All right. So have you ever opened your mouth and said something without thinking and then regretted it maybe later? This is one of those moments. I didn't necessarily expect him to take me up on this offer, but here I am. So I want to talk to you about not just a good marriage, but a great marriage, the kind that God had in mind when he created us for each other. And I think the first thing, and the thing that is above all things, and the thing that should be obvious to most of us, but probably needs to be spoken anyway, is that we need to have Christ as our center. He needs to be, first of all, the center of our own lives, and then the center of our marriages. I'm going to read a couple of scriptures. If you want to follow along, they're in Galatians and Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, and then down at verse 33. Be imitators of God as beloved children. Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. And then verse 33 says, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let his wife see that she respects her husband. There's a lot packed in between those verses about relationships. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, but let's flip over to chapter 2 of Philippians. I'm going to start at verse 3. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interest of others. Have this in mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God something to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. And being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. You might think those are kind of odd scriptures to have as a marriage presentation, or part of a marriage presentation, but if we are to have Christ as our center, those verses tell us exactly how to do that. We need to make sure that we are loving each other and serving each other just as Christ has done for us and is still doing for us. Now, I know a lot of people have come into Terry's office and he'll ask them what they think is a good marriage, and they'll say, oh, we need to be like a 50-50, each of us giving 50-50. It's a 50-50 relationship, give and take. It's not. It's a 100% relationship. You have to be giving 100% of yourself to make sure your spouse is at least striving to give 100% of yourself to make sure that the desires and needs of your spouse is met. For example, at our house, you can feel free to interject here, okay? And you know, this comes along with seasons too. When you have little kids, it's going to be different than when you have teenagers, and that's going to be different than when your kids are out of the house, and that's going to be different from when you're retired. So every season is going to look a little different for your marriage, but something that I have always done for Terry is I know when he's had a rough day, when he comes home from the office and he's had 3 counseling sessions, 20 phone calls, a meeting with the DS, and he is just wiped out, mostly emotionally and mentally. And most of the time I'll tell him to just go sit in your chair, park it there, turn on the TV, and then you can watch whatever sports program you want to watch through the back of your eyelids. Sometimes he just needs that. And as wives, we need to be very sensitive to our husbands now and their needs. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there were days when our kids were little that he would come home like that, and after working and taking care of our girls, I was pulling my hair out too. Those are days when it's hard to give 100% of yourself. So those were days that we helped each other out. We learned each other's rhythms and needs, and something he has always done for me, even when the girls were little, was to give me my afternoon nap on Sundays. That's the thing that kept me going through the week. Sunday afternoons, especially being an introvert, you come home from church after talking to all these people, and introverts will understand. You just need some time by yourself. And Sunday afternoons, he has always given me my time to do that, to go take a nap or to read a book or whatever I needed to do to recharge. Something that is included in these verses is grace and forgiveness. And we forget sometimes to give the same grace and forgiveness to our spouses that we give to others outside of our own homes. We come home and we're nitpicking at each other and trying to start an argument sometimes, and we need to remember that grace and forgiveness are what Christ gave to us, And so we need to be giving that to our spouses at home. And then another thing we need to be doing for our spouses is praying for them. There is something very powerful about hearing your spouse pray for you, and also about knowing that your spouse is praying for you through the day. I would suggest texting your spouse once in a while saying, I'm praying for you. It's simple, but it's very powerful, and it needs to be done. Now, learning to love your spouse like Christ loves you means listening to your spouse's needs and really getting to the heart of the matter. And if you don't know your spouse's love language, I would suggest checking out Gary Smalley's book, The Five Love Languages. It's Gary Chapman, not Gary Smalley. Anyway, there are 5 love languages: quality time, touch, words of affirmation, service, and gifts. Mine is quality time. There's a little test that you take, and it tells you which is yours if you don't know what yours is. For a while, we had a hard time figuring each other out, but our marriage got much better and much richer as we learned each other's love languages and how to speak those to each other. Mine is quality time. That means I need his 100% uninterrupted time. That means no cell phone, no phone calls from 15 different people. I just need his time. Touch, I think that's pretty obvious. Touch and words of affirmation are his. I need to be building him up out loud to him and telling him what a great guy he is and all that kind of stuff. And holding his hand, putting my arm around him, taking every moment to show him how much I love him that way. Some people...
You said interject. There you go.
Yes, there you go. Some people's love language is service. That means you do acts of service for your spouse. Other people love getting gifts and giving gifts. Make sure you know what your spouse's love language is so that you can have a great relationship. And then make sure that you have fun together. Some people forget what it was like and how much fun it was dating each other and learning about each other. Well, you should never stop learning about each other. You should never stop dating each other. If you've forgotten what that's like, set some time aside and put it in your calendar so that in pen, or if you have an electronic calendar, good. Put a reminder the day before, 2 days before, however many reminders you need to remind yourself that you're doing something with your spouse. Go hang out with each other, doing the things that you like to do. You know, ours, typically, we go out to eat because I cook a lot at home, so it always involves a meal, our time out together. But there are other things you can do. You can go on a picnic, a hike, biking, go on a road trip, play a game together, go to the shooting range. I think I can say that because we're in South Carolina. That's actually something that we've found that we enjoy doing together. So, and then make sure that you do that, whatever that is, regularly and often. Make it a regular thing. So when you go on your date, make sure that you set your next date on your calendar so that you don't forget to do it. And then 6 months later, you're thinking, oh, we really need to go out again. Make sure you have fun together. It's very important. And do it regularly and often. And that's about all that I have to say.
Miriam and I have been praying about this. We've had a lot of experience with couples, and Miriam and I are just one couple. We've had couples sobbing in our living rooms. We've had Couples ask Miriam and I to meet with them, sobbing in the office, and I've always wanted to have a way that we could have a macro impact on the marriages in the congregation that God had entrusted to me. There are individuals that are in the sanctuary this morning, individuals that are a part of our congregation who will be listening online later and are connected to our community via live stream. You don't need me to tell you that your marriage is distressed. You just know. And I don't know if the 60% holds in churches or if that's a national number, but you just know your marriage is not what you want it to be. There are some of you that are preparing for marriage, and you're filled with optimism and hope for the future, and there's no way you could ever fathom being one of the 60%. If you're not going to be one of the 60%, if you're one of the ones that has a very happy marriage, it takes intentional, on-purpose work that is worth every minute of that work. I love being married to Miriam. I love it. She makes life awesome. And you can have that kind of marriage. Now, we're still growing. We're still learning. We're not perfect in our marriage, but I love being married to that lady. There are those in our congregation that may not be in a bad place, but you're in a place where you would love accountability, where you would love intentionality, where you would love the insight and the accountability of another couple, but you've not known what to do about it. And there are some in our congregation who are in need of significant marital repair. Now, for those folks, I have a request for you. I'm asking you to commit to making a better marriage for as many years as it's taken you to get where you are today. Now, some of you are like, well, can it go any faster? Thanks to the grace of God, it often does. But I have learned in pastoral ministry that if you aren't willing to commit to a great marriage, for the same amount of time that you have invested in a bad marriage, then that the resolve of your commitment is going to be tested beyond your commitment. You need to have the commitment and the resolve to make it work. Now, since we've been strategizing about this service for the last 2 months, it has allowed for us to recruit and train 9 couples in our congregation who are today, this moment, prepared to serve as marriage mentors in our congregation. They are ready. Now, some of you would say, oh man, this is intriguing to me. I would love to be a marriage mentor. Why didn't they ask me? Well, it's because we had a limited number. The number of individuals that we would have liked to have trained did exceed the number of people we could fit in a room, and we had to start somewhere. And so we didn't ask everyone that might be interested. But if you are interested in being a marriage mentor, send me an email. It's twayman@greenvillenaz.org. If you can't remember that, go to the website, click on the ministry team. My email address can be found there. So if you're interested in that, contact me. But here's where the rubber meets the road for this message. This message cannot be completed in the context of this service. It cannot be. Some of you are preparing for marriage. I want you to know that right now it is optional for couples preparing to be married to be partnered with a marriage mentor. Once our marriage mentors get a year or so of experience, I will be proposing to the church board that we no longer allow that to be optional. I believe in strong marriage. And if we are going to bless marriage, we need to bless marriage. And that means investing in those couples so that they are more excited about being married 20 years from now than they are on their wedding day. Some of you have a good marriage and you want a great marriage. We have a marriage mentor ready for you. Those two are relatively easy because folks would love to say, I have a good marriage, but I'd like to know how to make it great. Or I'm getting ready to be married and I would like a marriage mentor. But it's the ones that are in need of repair that are the hardest. Because in our culture, we're taught to be good. How are you doing? I'm good. How are things at home? Good. We're taught to be good. That's why we go so long with marriage messes. We're taught that it's not okay to say we need help. We're convinced that if I say I need help, then there's something wrong with me. People are going to judge me. People are going to look down on me. Some of you know your marriage isn't what it needs to be. And instead of strategizing and thinking about what am I going to do to make it better, we hope that it gets better tomorrow, and tomorrow it doesn't. And then we convince ourselves that we hope it gets better the next day, and then it doesn't. We keep hoping against hope. And some very well may be at a place in their life where they say, I am not willing to take the risk to experience more pain in exchange for a better marriage. I would rather maintain the status quo than take another risk. Brother and sister, that is the enemy of your soul at work in your life, trying to steal you of joy and hope and peace. And when you go home today, here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to go home, type twayman@greenvillenaz.org in your email. Subject, marriage mentor. My spouse and I would like a marriage mentor. And sign your name. I will pair you with a marriage mentor. And only you and the marriage mentor and I will know who you are. Do not let this day go by before you take action on behalf of your marriage. When you go home, the enemy is going to be in your car telling you, just give it another week. If you give it another week, the likelihood of you responding goes way down. If you say, we're going to give it one more try, the likelihood goes down. If you say, I'm not willing to take a risk, the likelihood of you experiencing good things in your marriage going up goes down. Brother and sister, please, I implore you on Christ's behalf, don't let the day go by before you say, I believe that this marriage thing is worth taking another risk. It's worth experiencing another try. I believe that the power of God at work in me and in my marriage is more powerful than the destructive forces that have been at work in our home to date. So I'm asking you, I'm even begging you, believe that your marriage is worth another risk, another try, and email me, and I will pair you with somebody who has been trained to come alongside of you and journey together with you in this life of marriage and see what God will do. Father, you know that I have already prayed that your Holy Spirit would be found in the cars of our parking lot across this campus. You know that my prayer has been that when these couples get to their car, they would look at each other and think back to the day they met, to the day they got engaged, to the day they said, I do, and believe that promise they made to each other and you is worth another try to make their marriage what it needs to be. That the couple that has a good marriage but wants to discover what a great marriage looks like, that they would send an email, that the couple preparing for marriage would send an email. And Lord, could it be that as we intentionally, proactively are investing in relationships with each other, that our young people would see the mission, your mission, at work. We talk a lot about the F part of the mission, family, that Jesus said, the world will know we're your disciples by how we love each other. Father, that includes our marriage. May our marriages point to the selflessness that you have modeled for us in Jesus. So, Lord, I beg you, speak loudly today. Give people courage today to respond to this message, and we will see what it is that you do in our homes and give you the praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for your patience. Some of you, if you'd like to hear Miriam again, let me know. And listen, young people, my hope and prayer is that we model for you what a great marriage looks like. So when you get engaged, you can have tons of examples of the men and women that you can look to say, I want to have a marriage just like them. Will you help me make it so? God bless you. Have a great week.